The maintenance shaft on level 47 of the Galactic Trade Station was definitely not where Marcus Chun expected to spend his Tuesday evening. The cramped space barely fit his 6-foot frame, and the smell of recycled air mixed with alien cleaning chemicals made his nose wrinkle. But when the station's central computer systems started glitching, threatening to shut down life support for 3 million inhabitants, someone had to crawl through these tunnels to fix it. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead and squinted at the tangle of wires before him. As the only human technician on the station, he'd become the go-to person for problems that required creative thinking. Most alien species were brilliant at following protocols, but humans seemed to have a knack for improvising solutions that shouldn't work, but somehow did. "Okay, let's see what we're dealing with here," he muttered, pulling out his scanner. The device beeped angrily as it detected 17 different types of incompatible technology, all trying to talk to each other at once. No wonder this thing is having a nervous breakdown. The station was a marvel of galactic cooperation, or at least that's what the tourism brochures said. In reality, it was a patchwork of different alien technologies jury-rigged together over centuries. The Zentari had built the original structure with their obsession for geometric perfection. The Korthax had added their bioneural networks that could think, but had terrible anxiety. The Vexi had installed their quantum processors that worked faster than light, but only on days ending in vowel sounds in their language. And somehow, Marcus was supposed to make it all play nice together. A soft scraping sound echoed through the shaft behind him. Marcus paused, listening. The station had its usual collection of maintenance drones, but they moved with mechanical precision. This sounded more organic. "Hello," he called out, feeling slightly ridiculous. "If you're supposed to be here, please say something. If you're not supposed to be here, please go away so I can pretend I never saw you." Silence. Marcus shrugged and turned back to his work. He'd been on the station for 3 years now, ever since the Galactic Council had decided that human adaptability made them useful for solving problems other species couldn't handle. It was a diplomatic way of saying humans were crazy enough to try things that might explode. He was just reaching for a particularly stubborn connector when something moved in his peripheral vision. Marcus turned his head and found himself face-to-face with the most unusual alien he'd ever seen. She was definitely female, though he wasn't sure how he knew that. Her skin had a soft lavender hue that seemed to shift and shimmer in the maintenance lighting. Her hair, if it could be called hair, flowed like liquid silver down to her shoulders. But it was her eyes that caught him off guard, large and luminous, the color of deep ocean water, with an intelligence that was unmistakably curious. Marcus said eloquently. "Hi there." The alien girl tilted her head, studying him with those incredible eyes. When she spoke, her voice was like music played on crystal bells. "You are the human technician." "Marcus Chun." "That's me," Marcus confirmed, wondering how she knew his name. "And you are?" "I am Zarathes of the Luminal Collective," she replied formally. "I have been assigned to observe your repair procedures." Marcus blinked. "Observe? Like right now? In a maintenance shaft?" "Your species has a success rate of 94% in resolving technical difficulties that have defeated other galactic species. The collective wishes to understand your methodologies." "My methodologies," Marcus repeated slowly. "You mean the part where I stare at broken things until I figure out how to hit them in the right way?" Zarathes moved closer, and Marcus caught a faint scent like starlight and ozone. "You jest, but preliminary observations suggest human problem-solving involves intuitive leaps that bypass conventional logical frameworks." "It is fascinating." Marcus felt heat creep up his neck. Nobody had ever called his technical troubleshooting fascinating before. Usually, his supervisors just thanked him for not blowing anything up. "Well," he said, turning back to the tangled mess of wires, "feel free to observe away. Just try not to touch anything glowing. About half of it is supposed to glow, and the other half will kill you if it does." He pulled out a small tool and began carefully tracing one of the bioneural connections. The Korthax networks were tricky. They responded to emotional states as much as electrical signals. The problem here is that three different systems are trying to be in charge at the same time. He explained, not sure if Zarathus was actually interested, but finding it helpful to talk through the problem. The Zentari core wants everything perfectly ordered, the Corthax network wants to feel appreciated, and the Vexi processors keep trying to solve everything simultaneously across 17 dimensions. How do you reconcile such fundamental incompatibilities? Zarathus asked, her voice closer than before. Marcus glanced over his shoulder and realized she'd moved close enough that he could see the subtle patterns of light that played across her skin. Focus, he told himself. Broken computer first, pretty alien second. You don't reconcile them, he said, carefully separating two connections that had somehow wound themselves together. You find a way to make them think they're all getting what they want. Like relationship counseling, but for quantum processors. To his surprise, Zarathus laughed. The sound was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. An interesting metaphor. You anthropomorphize the technological systems. Everything's got personality if you work with it long enough, Marcus said, making a small adjustment to one of the Vexi nodes. This little guy here? He's anxious. Keeps second-guessing himself. But if you give him a small, simple task first, he gains confidence and stops overthinking the big problems. As if to prove his point, the node pulsed with a soft, steady light instead of its previous frantic flickering. Remarkable, Zarathus breathed. You treat the technology as if it were alive. Well, some of it kind of is, Marcus said, moving on to a cluster of Corthax bioneural fibers. These guys here, they're literally alive. They're bred to process information, but they need social interaction to stay healthy. Watch this. Marcus gently touched the cluster of fibers, and they responded by glowing with a warm, golden light. Hey, buddies, he said softly. I know you've been having trouble talking to the quantum processors. They don't mean to be difficult. They just think really, really fast. How about we set up a translation buffer? Give you time to process their requests at your own speed. The bioneural cluster pulsed approvingly, and Marcus heard Zarathus make a small sound of amazement behind him. You communicate with them, she said. Not just interface, actual communication. Sure, Marcus said, beginning to wire in a small buffer unit he'd brought for exactly this purpose. I mean, they can't talk back the way you and are talking, but they respond to tone and intent. Most techs try to force them to work at machine speeds, but that just stresses them out. Stress makes them make mistakes. Mistakes cause system failures. System failures make everyone's day worse. He finished the buffer connection and felt the bioneural cluster's relief as the frantic quantum signals suddenly became manageable, steady pulses they could process without panic. The theoretical literature suggested such communication was impossible, Zarathus said. The Luminal Collective has studied these systems for decades. Marcus shrugged, moving on to the Zentari core interface. Maybe you were thinking about it too hard. Sometimes the simple answer is the right one. The Zentari core just wants everything neat and organized like a really obsessive librarian. So you give it filing systems and clear hierarchies. The Corthax networks want to feel useful and appreciated. The Vexi processors want interesting problems to solve. Give each system what it actually wants instead of trying to force them all to want the same thing. As he spoke, Marcus made a series of quick adjustments, creating clear data pathways and establishing priority protocols that satisfied each system's core requirements. The chaotic tangle of connections began to organize itself into something resembling order. But how did you know what each system wanted? Zarathus asked. The technical specifications contain no such information. Marcus paused, a connector halfway to its socket, and considered the question. I'll watch them, I guess. When a system keeps failing in the same way, it's usually trying to tell you something. Like when the bioneural networks kept clustering together instead of distributing evenly, they were lonely. When a Zentari core kept rejecting perfectly valid inputs, it wanted them organized differently. When the Vexi processors kept overclocking themselves into thermal shutdown, they were bored. You observed behavior patterns and inferred emotional states, Zarathus said slowly. From technological systems, I suppose. Marcus made the final connection and held his breath. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the systems came online. The bioneural networks glowed with healthy, golden light. The Zentari core hummed with satisfied efficiency. The Vex-High processors settled into a steady, stable rhythm. System integrity restored, announced a pleasant voice from the station's central computer. All networks functioning within normal parameters. Thank you for your assistance. Marcus grinned and started packing up his tools. And that's how you fix a nervous breakdown in a trillion-credit computer system. Extraordinary, Zarathes whispered. The collective spent 3 months attempting to resolve this incompatibility. You accomplished it in 47 minutes. Well, Marcus said, feeling a bit embarrassed by her obvious amazement. I had the advantage of fresh eyes. Sometimes you get so focused on how things are supposed to work that you forget to pay attention to how they actually want to work. They made their way back through the maintenance shaft toward the main corridor. Marcus couldn't help but notice how gracefully Zarathes moved through the cramped space, her luminescent skin providing its own soft light. Your species continues to confound our expectations, she said as they reached the exit hatch. The collective's initial assessment categorized humans as primitively aggressive with limited technological sophistication. Marcus laughed as he opened the hatch. Sound about right. We're definitely aggressive, and our tech is pretty basic compared to most galactic standards. But maybe that's why we're good at this stuff. We don't know enough to know what's impossible. They emerged into the main corridor, and Marcus was momentarily blinded by the normal lighting after so long in the dimmer maintenance areas. When his eyes adjusted, he realized that Zarathes looked even more remarkable in full light. Her skin seemed to glow from within, and those incredible eyes held depths he could lose himself in. You are staring, Zarathes observed, but she didn't sound offended. Marcus felt heat creep up his neck again. Sorry, you're really beautiful. The words were out before he could stop them. Marcus immediately wanted to crawl back into the maintenance shaft and hide. Here he was, representing humanity to an advanced alien civilization, and he was hitting on his observer. Smooth, Marcus. Real smooth. But instead of being offended or confused, Zarathes went very still. The patterns of light under her skin shifted, swirling faster, and her cheeks took on a deeper lavender hue. What did you say? She asked, her voice softer than before. Marcus swallowed hard. I said you're beautiful. I probably shouldn't have said that. It was unprofessional. I just meant say it again, Zarathes interrupted, stepping closer to him. Her luminous eyes were wide, and those swirling patterns of light under her skin were definitely moving faster now. Say what again? That word. Beautiful. Say it again, human. Marcus stared at her, completely lost. Beautiful. The light patterns under her skin exploded into a brilliant display of shifting colors, and her cheeks darkened to an almost purple hue. She looked down at her hands as if they were doing something strange. I do not understand what is happening to me, she said quietly. When you said that word, my bioluminescent responses activated involuntarily. My dermal temperature increased. My neural pathways experienced unusual fluctuations. Marcus blinked as understanding dawned. Are you blushing? Is that what those light patterns mean? I'm unfamiliar with this term, blushing, Zarathes said, still staring at her hands. But if it describes involuntary physiological responses to being called beautiful by a human technician in a maintenance corridor, then perhaps that is what this is. A slow smile spread across Marcus's face. So, when I called you beautiful, you liked it? Zarathes looked up at him, and those incredible eyes were definitely brighter now. The Luminal Collective does not have a concept equivalent to your word, beautiful. We have terms for efficiency, for optimal design, for mathematical elegance. But this word you used, it made me feel something I've never felt before. What did it make you feel? Marcus asked softly. Warm, she said simply. And valued? Not for my function or my analytical capabilities, but for myself. For what I am. She paused, the light patterns under her skin shifting to softer, warmer hues. It was pleasant, very pleasant. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the station's climate controls. You are beautiful, Zarathes. Not just efficient or well-designed. Beautiful. The lights under her skin blazed again, and this time she smiled, an expression that was unmistakably happiness despite the alien features. When you say it, I feel like I matter beyond my designated function. Is this how humans always feel when called beautiful? Not always, Marcus said honestly. But when it's real, when someone means it, yeah, it feels pretty good. They stood there in the corridor, looking at each other, and Marcus realized that something significant had just happened. He wasn't sure what exactly, but it felt important in a way that went beyond fixing broken computers. I should report back to the collective about your repair methods, Zarathes said finally, but she made no move to leave. Right, Marcus said. Important observations to document. Yes, very important. She paused. Perhaps I should observe more of your work to ensure I have comprehensive data for my report. Marcus grinned. I think that's an excellent idea. Tomorrow I'm scheduled to recalibrate the atmospheric processors on level 23. Could be educational. Educational, Zarathes agreed, and the way her eyes lit up suggested she was looking forward to far more than just technical observations. As they walked down the corridor together, Marcus reflected on how his Tuesday evening had taken a very unexpected turn. He'd started the day as just another human technician trying to keep ancient alien technology working. Now, he wasn't sure what he was, but it definitely felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. 3 weeks had passed since the maintenance shaft incident, and Marcus Chun was discovering that having an alien observer following him around the station was both wonderful and completely terrifying. Zarathes had officially requested extended observation privileges from the Luminal Collective, citing the need for comprehensive analysis of human technical methodologies. What she didn't mention in her reports was that she'd started bringing him coffee, or at least the alien equivalent that didn't taste like motor oil mixed with regret. Marcus was currently lying on his back under an atmosphere processor that had decided to develop what he could only describe as seasonal depression. The machine was technically functional, but it kept sighing actual sighing sounds every few minutes and producing air that smelled faintly of melancholy. Pass me the neural interface adapter, he called to Zarathes, who was sitting cross-legged beside the processor with his toolkit spread out before her in perfect geometric patterns. Even his chaotic collection of jury-rigged tools looked elegant when she organized them. The blue cylindrical device with the crystalline array? She asked, holding up the tool in question. That's the one. Marcus felt her place it in his outstretched hand, and he tried not to think about how her fingers brushed against his for just a moment longer than necessary. Thanks. Over the past weeks, he learned quite a bit about Zarathes and her people. The Luminal Collective was a highly advanced civilization that existed in a state of perfect logical harmony. Every individual knew their function, performed it flawlessly, and found satisfaction in contributing to the greater whole. It sounded wonderful in theory and absolutely terrifying in practice. Marcus, Zarathes said suddenly, may I ask you a question about human social dynamics? Sure, Marcus replied, making a delicate adjustment to the processor's emotional regulation circuits. Shoot, I do not understand this expression. Are you asking me to discharge a weapon? Marcus chuckled. No, sorry. It means go ahead and ask your question. Human idioms continue to perplex me. She paused. When you called me beautiful 3 weeks ago, was this a common form of human social interaction? Do you regularly inform alien beings that they are aesthetically pleasing? Marcus nearly dropped the neural interface adapter. No, that's not really a common thing. I mean, humans do compliment each other, but usually not complete strangers they've just met in maintenance shafts. Then, why did you say it to me? The processor above him gave another mechanical sigh, and Marcus realized he was going to have to be honest if he wanted to fix both the machine and whatever was happening between him and Zarathus. Because it was true, he said simply. You are, the most beautiful being I've ever seen. And I'm apparently not very good at keeping my thoughts to myself when I'm surprised. He heard Zarathus shift position, and her voice came from much closer to his head. You were surprised by my appearance? I was surprised by everything about you, Marcus admitted, sliding out from under the processor to look at her. Your appearance, your intelligence, the way you actually listened when I was explaining things instead of just waiting for me to finish so you could tell me I was doing it wrong. Zarathus was leaning over him, her luminous hair creating a silvery curtain that caught the light. Those incredible eyes studied his face with an intensity that made his heart do interesting things. In the collective, she said softly, we do not speak of beauty. We speak of optimal design, efficient function, pleasing symmetry. But when you use that word, beautiful, I experience sensations that have no equivalent in my language. What kind of sensations? Marcus asked, his voice rougher than he intended. Warmth, brightness, a feeling of expansion, as if I am becoming more than my designated parameters. The light patterns under her skin began their familiar dance, shifting to warmer hues. When you call me beautiful, I feel beautiful. Not just aesthetically optimal, but something more significant. Something that matters beyond function. Marcus sat up slowly, bringing them face to face. You do matter beyond function, Zarathus. You matter because you're you, because you laugh at my terrible jokes, because you organize my tools better than I ever could, because you ask questions that make me think about things differently. Her skin blazed with brilliant patterns of gold and violet. When you speak like this, my bioluminescent responses become intense. Is that good or bad? I believe it is very good, she said, leaning closer, though the collective would likely find my reactions concerning. Why concerning? Zarathus hesitated, her expression growing troubled. The collective values harmony above all else. We exist in perfect logical order, each individual fulfilling their designated role without deviation. But since I have been observing you, I find myself wanting things that are not part of my function. What kind of things? I want to understand why atmosphere processors develop emotional responses when maintained by humans. I want to learn your idioms, even the ones that make no logical sense. I want to... She paused, the light patterns under her skin shifting to deeper, more complex hues. I want to continue feeling the sensations I experience when you call me beautiful. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the station's environmental controls. Those don't sound like terrible things to want. They are deviations from optimal function, Zarathus said quietly. In the collective, we call such deviations brightness sickness, when an individual begins to value personal experience over collective harmony. It is considered a form of mental instability. That's ridiculous, Marcus said immediately. Wanting to understand things, wanting to feel good about yourself, wanting to be more than just a cog in a machine. Those are healthy human desires. But I am not human. No, but you're a person, an individual. You have thoughts and feelings and preferences that matter because they're yours. Marcus reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away and gently touch her hand. Her skin was warm and soft, with a subtle texture like silk. The fact that you want things beyond your designated function doesn't make you sick. It makes you alive. The light patterns under her skin exploded into a brilliant cascade of colors, and her fingers curled around his. You truly believe this? I know this, Marcus said firmly. I've met a lot of different species working on this station, and the ones who are happiest aren't the ones following their programming perfectly. They're the ones who figure out how to be themselves while still contributing to something bigger. A soft chime from the atmosphere processor interrupted them, and Marcus realized the machine had stopped sighing. Instead, it was humming, a contented, peaceful sound that indicated optimal function. How did you fix it? Zarathus asked, looking up at the processor in surprise. You did not complete your repairs. Marcus grinned. I didn't need to. Atmosphere processors are partly bioneural, like the Cortex networks. They respond to emotional environments. This one was depressed because it felt isolated, just processing air all day with no interaction or appreciation. But when it sensed us having a genuine emotional connection nearby, it perked up. Sometimes the best repair is just letting things know they're not alone. You fixed a machine by providing it with emotional support? Sort of. I fixed a machine by demonstrating what healthy emotional connection looks like. Bioneural systems learn by example. Marcus stood up, pulling Zarathes with him. It's like how you started feeling beautiful when I called you beautiful. Sometimes we need someone else to show us what we're capable of feeling. Zarathes stared at him for a long moment, her luminous eyes wide with something that might have been wonder. The collective teaches that emotional responses are inefficient complications. But this processor is now functioning at higher capacity than it has in months. Emotions aren't complications, Marcus said. They're information. Fear tells you something is wrong. Joy tells you something is right. Love tells you something is precious and worth protecting. And what does this feeling tell me? Zarathes asked, placing her free hand over her heart. This sensation I experience when you speak of me with such care? Marcus felt his own heart speed up. What does it feel like? Like starlight gathering into a single bright point. Like music that has no sound but fills every space inside me. She paused, struggling for words. Like I'm becoming something more than I was designed to be. That sounds like happiness, Marcus said softly. Maybe even love. The word hung in the air between them, and Marcus immediately wondered if he'd gone too far. The concept of love might not even exist in her culture. But instead of pulling away, Zarathes stepped closer. Love, she repeated, testing the word. We have no equivalent in collective languages. What does it mean? It means caring about someone more than logic says you should. Marcus said honestly. It means wanting them to be happy even if it complicates your life. It means they become precious to you for reasons that have nothing to do with their usefulness. Zarathes was quiet for so long that Marcus began to worry he'd frightened her. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. When I return to the collective, I will be required to submit a complete report on human technical methodologies. But I do not know how to explain the most important thing I've learned. What's that? That humans do not just repair broken technology. You repair broken connections. You teach isolated systems how to communicate. You show depressed processors that they are valued. Her eyes met his brilliant with unshed emotions. You taught me that I could feel beautiful. You showed me what it means to matter beyond my function. How do I explain in a report that you taught me love? Marcus felt something click into place in his chest, like a final connection being made in a complex system. Maybe that's not something for a report. Maybe that's something that's just ours. Ours, Zarathes repeated, and her smile was like dawn breaking over an alien horizon. I like this word. It suggests connection beyond individual function. Unity without loss of self. Exactly, Marcus said, and then, because he was tired of being careful and logical, he leaned down and kissed her. Her lips were soft and warm, with a subtle sweetness like honey and starlight. The light patterns under her skin went wild, cascading in brilliant waves that illuminated both of them. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. That, Zarathes said unsteadily, was definitely not covered in any technical manual. Marcus laughed. The best repairs never are. She studied his face with those luminous eyes, and he could see her processing what had just happened. My bioluminescent responses are indicating extreme pleasure and satisfaction. Is this normal for human kissing experiences? It's definitely a good sign, Marcus assured her. Then perhaps we should conduct further experimentation. For scientific purposes. I love the way you think, Marcus said, and kissed her again. This time, when they broke apart, the atmosphere processor gave a happy little chime of approval, and the lights in the corridor seemed brighter than before. Marcus, Zarathes said suddenly, her expression growing serious. "There is something I must tell you. The collective has sent additional observers to study human technical methods. They will arrive tomorrow." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate controls. Additional observers? High-ranking analysts who specialize in detecting irregularities in individual behavior patterns. They're coming because my preliminary reports indicated that human methods might be worth studying. But if they observe my current behavioral deviations... She trailed off, but Marcus understood. They'll know you've gone off script. They will know that I have been affected by prolonged exposure to human influence. They will classify me as compromised and recall me for reconditioning. Reconditioning? Marcus didn't like the sound of that at all. A process that removes harmful deviations and restores optimal function. Zarathus's voice was steady, but the light patterns under her skin had shifted to worried blues and grays. I would return to perfect logical harmony with the collective. I would no longer experience these complications. You mean you'd forget about being beautiful? You'd forget about feeling happy, about caring for things beyond your function. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. You'd forget about us. Yes, she whispered. I would return to my designated parameters. I would be efficient and logical and perfectly functional. Like hell, Marcus said fiercely. Nobody gets to take away your feelings. Nobody gets to decide that you caring about things is a malfunction that needs fixing. Zarathus looked at him with something that might have been hope. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we show these observers exactly how effective human methods really are. And maybe, just maybe, we convince them that your deviations aren't bugs, they're features. You believe we can convince the collective that emotional responses are beneficial. Marcus grinned, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. Sweetheart, I've spent 3 years fixing impossible problems on this station. A bunch of logical aliens who don't understand the value of feelings? That's just Tuesday. The atmospheric processor chimed again, as if in agreement, and the lights in the corridor seemed to pulse with determination. Besides, Marcus added, pulling Zarathus close, I just figure out how to make you happy. I'm not letting anyone take that away from either of us. As they walked back toward his quarters, Marcus's mind was already working on the problem. He had less than 24 hours to figure out how to prove to an advanced alien civilization that love wasn't a malfunction. It was an upgrade. No pressure at all. The delegation from the Luminal Collective arrived at exactly 0800 hours, because advanced alien civilizations apparently ran on the same rigid scheduling as Marcus's old high school. He watched from the observation deck as their ship docked, a sleek, crystalline vessel that looked like someone had folded mathematics into physical form. Beautiful, efficient, and completely cold. They're here, Zarathus said softly, joining him at the viewport. Her bioluminescent patterns had been subdued all morning, shifting nervously between muted blues and grays. How many? Marcus asked, though he could see the answer for himself as figures began emerging from the ship. 3 tall, elegant aliens that looked like more formal versions of Zarathus, their skin patterns moving in perfect synchronization. 3 high analysts, Zarathus replied. Kethvar is the senior observer, specialist in detecting behavioral deviations. Sylvana monitors for efficiency degradation. And Mordun, she paused. Mordun specializes in reconditioning procedures. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate systems. They brought a specialist in memory modification. It is standard protocol when investigating potential compromise. Zarathus's voice was steady, but Marcus could see the worried pulse of her skin patterns. Marcus, perhaps you should avoid contact with them. If they perceive you as a corrupting influence, then they'll be absolutely right, Marcus interrupted with a grin. I'm planning to corrupt their entire worldview before lunch. This is not amusing, Zarathus said, turning to face him. These are high analysts. They can detect emotional responses from biochemical traces in the air. They can measure microexpressions and analyze vocal stress patterns. They will know immediately that my behavioral patterns have been altered. Good. Marcus said, surprising her. Let them see that you've changed. Let them see that you're happier, more effective, more capable of solving problems creatively. Then, let's show them why that's an improvement, not a malfunction. Before Zarathes could respond, Marcus's comm unit chirped. Technician Chun to Docking Bay 3. Priority maintenance required. Marcus and Zarathes exchanged glances. There were no scheduled maintenance operations in Docking Bay 3. This was obviously the collective's way of arranging a meeting. Showtime, Marcus said, grabbing his toolkit. Ready to demonstrate some human methodology? I do not believe I am ready for this, Zarathes admitted. Nobody ever is, Marcus replied cheerfully. That's what makes it interesting. Docking Bay 3 was a study in controlled chaos when they arrived. The three high analysts stood in perfect formation near their ship, while a crowd of various alien species had gathered to watch. Word had apparently spread that something significant was about to happen. Marcus approached the delegation with the easy confidence of someone who spent his days fixing impossible problems. The first thing he noticed was how still they were, not just physically, but energetically. Unlike Zarathus's constantly shifting light patterns, their bioluminescence moved in rigid, geometric patterns that suggested total emotional control. Technician Chun, said the tallest of the three, who had to be Kethvar. I am High Analyst Kethvar of the Luminal Collective. We require demonstration of your technical methodologies. Always happy to help, Marcus replied easily. What seems to be the problem? No problem exists, said the second analyst, Sylvana. This is an efficiency evaluation. We will observe your procedures and determine if they merit formal study. Marcus nodded, though he noticed something interesting. About 30 feet away, a large cargo handling system had been wheeled into the bay. It was clearly broken. Smoke was rising from several components, and the mechanical arms were twitching spasmodically. But the analysts were ignoring it completely. I see, Marcus said. And what would you like me to demonstrate on? We have prepared a theoretical scenario involving incompatible technological interfaces. More Dunn said in a voice like ice crystals forming. You will explain your approach to resolving such conflicts. Theoretical, Marcus repeated, glancing meaningfully at the smoking cargo handler. Right. Well, I suppose I could talk about theory. But I've always found it more effective to demonstrate on actual problems. Like that cargo handler over there that's about to explode. The three analysts turned to look at the malfunctioning machine as if noticing it for the first time. That system is not part of the evaluation parameters, Kethvar said dismissively. Maybe not, Marcus agreed, but it's about to scatter burning debris all over your nice ship. Plus, there are about 50 beings in this docking bay who might get hurt. Seems like fixing it should be the priority. The cargo handler is the responsibility of the station's maintenance department, Sylvana stated. It is not relevant to our assessment of your problem-solving capabilities. Marcus felt something click into place in his mind. This was perfect. Actually, it's completely relevant. See, this is exactly the kind of situation where human methodology differs from standard galactic approaches. You see a broken machine that's not your responsibility, so you ignore it. I see a problem that needs solving, so I solve it. Before any of the analysts could object, Marcus walked over to the smoking cargo handler. The crowd of onlookers murmured with interest as he began circling the machine, examining it from different angles. Okay, let's see what we're dealing with, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. This is a Corthax binaural cargo handler interfaced with his Zentari control matrix and powered by a Vexi quantum cell. 3 different technological paradigms that were never designed to work together. He opened his toolkit and pulled out a scanner, very aware that everyone in the bay was watching. The bioneural components are stressed and confused because they're receiving commands in a format they can't understand. The Zentari matrix is frustrated because the bioneural responses don't match its logical parameters. And the Vexi power cell is overcompensating by providing more energy, which is making everything worse. Standard protocol would be to replace incompatible components with standardized alternatives, Kethvar observed coldly. Sure, Marcus agreed, popping open an access panel. But That would take 3 days and cost about 50,000 credits. Or he pulled out a small device that looked like it had been built from spare parts and duct tape. I can fix it in 10 minutes for free. What is that device? Sylvana asked, her perfect composure cracking slightly. A universal translator I built last month, Marcus replied, connecting his device to the cargo handler's central processor. It reads the bioneural responses, translates them into mathematical formats the Centauri matrix can understand, and moderates the power flow from the quantum cell. Basically, it teaches them all to speak the same language. Such a device is not mentioned in any technical literature. More done stated suspiciously. Because I made it up as I went along, Marcus said cheerfully. That's human methodology for you. We improvise. He made a few quick adjustments to his translator, and the cargo handler's spasmodic twitching began to settle into smoother movements. The smoke stopped rising, and the bioneural components began glowing with healthy golden light. Impossible sylvanabreted. You cannot resolve fundamental technological incompatibilities with improvised equipment. And yet, Marcus said as the cargo handler lifted a test container smoothly and placed it precisely where it belonged, here we are. The crowd of onlookers burst into appreciative chittering, clicking, and humming, the galactic equivalent of applause. Marcus noticed several other technicians in the crowd taking notes. This is a temporary solution at best, HFY said dismissively. The incompatibilities remain. The system will fail again. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But look at this. He gestured to his scanner's readouts. System efficiency is up 20% over baseline. The bioneural components are actually happier than they were before the breakdown. Sometimes incompatible systems work better together than they do separately if you give them the right support. He glanced at Zarathus, whose light patterns had brightened considerably, like having a luminal observer help with human maintenance procedures. Theoretically, our approaches should be completely incompatible. But in practice, Zarathus said, stepping forward, the combination of logical analysis and intuitive problem-solving has proven more effective than either approach alone. You see, Marcus said to the 3 analysts, incompatibility isn't always a bug. Sometimes it's a feature. HFY's expression remained cold, but Marcus noticed the other 2 analysts exchanging glances. Good, he had their attention. However, HFY said, our preliminary assessment indicates that observer Zarathus has experienced significant behavioral modifications during her time with you. These deviations from optimal function are concerning. What kind of deviations? Marcus asked innocently. Increased emotional responsiveness, inefficient attachment to non-essential factors, development of preferences beyond functional requirements. HFY's skin pattern sharpened into disapproving geometric shapes, classic symptoms of brightness sickness. The crowd had gone quiet, sensing that something important was happening. Marcus felt every eye in the bay on him as he considered his response. Well, he said finally, let's test that theory. I beg your pardon? You say Zarathus's emotional responses are inefficient, Marcus said, walking back to his toolkit. Let's find out. Computer, activate docking bay emergency scenario 7. Emergency scenario? Sylvana asked sharply. The station's computer responded with a calm announcement, simulating critical system failure. Multiple incompatible networks experiencing cascade malfunction. Standard repair protocols insufficient. Immediate intervention required to prevent catastrophic damage. Suddenly, holographic displays throughout the bay showed a nightmare scenario. Bioneural networks screaming in panic. Centauri control systems locked in recursive loops. Vexi processors overheating as they try to solve 17 impossible problems simultaneously. This is a simulation of what happened 3 weeks ago when the station's central computer nearly had a complete breakdown. Marcus explained to the stunned analysts. Standard repair protocols failed completely. The problem was too complex, too chaotic for conventional approaches. He gestured to the holographic displays. 3 separate teams of expert technicians spent 6 hours trying to fix this. They failed, but I solved it in under an hour. Want to know how? You had assistance from observer Zarathes. More done, said suspiciously. I did, Marcus agreed. And that's exactly my point. See, your observer didn't just watch me work. She asked questions. She made suggestions. She helped me see patterns I might have missed. But most importantly, Marcus walked over to Zarathes and took her hand. Her light patterns blazed in response. She cared, he said simply, not just about completing the task efficiently, but about the bioneural components that were scared and confused, about the Zentari systems that felt unappreciated, about finding a solution that made everyone happy, not just functional. Emotional responses are irrelevant to technical procedures, HFY stated. Are they? Marcus challenged. Computer, show them the efficiency ratings. New displays appeared, showing before and after statistics. Observer Zarathes's work efficiency has increased 37% since beginning collaborative procedures with Technician Shun, the computer announced. Problem resolution speed improved 41%. Innovation index increased 62%. That is, Sylvana started, then stopped, clearly struggling with the data. That is impossible according to collective principles, HFY said flatly. Emotional deviations reduce efficiency. This is established fact. Then, explain this. Marcus said, pulling up more data. Since Zarathes started working with me, she's helped solve problems that had stumped other technicians for months. She's developed new approaches to bioneural interface protocols. She's even started making intuitive leaps that bypass standard logical frameworks. Show them the atmosphere processor from yesterday, Zarathes said suddenly, her voice gaining confidence. Marcus grinned and activated another holographic display. One of our atmospheric processors was experiencing what I can only describe as depression. Standard diagnostics showed all systems functional, but it was producing air that smelled like despair and making sad, whining noises. Machines do not experience depression, More Dunn stated. This one did, Marcus replied. And conventional repair methods weren't working because they were treating it like a mechanical problem instead of an emotional one. But when Zarathes suggested we examine its social connection protocols, the display showed the atmospheric processor's readings changing in real time as Marcus and Zarathes worked on it together. She realized that the processor felt isolated and underappreciated. Marcus continued. So we established regular status check-ins and implemented a feedback system that let it know its work was valued. Result? The processor is now functioning at 112% of baseline efficiency and producing air that actually smells pleasant. You treated a machine's depression with therapy? Sylvana asked, her voice barely above a whisper. We treated an intelligent system's emotional needs with respect and understanding. Zarathes corrected, her light patterns now blazing with confidence. And it responded by exceeding all performance expectations. This is... HFY struggled for words. This methodology is completely contrary to established principles. So, is calling someone beautiful, Marcus said, turning to face Zarathes. But when I called you beautiful, something wonderful happened. You didn't become less efficient. You became more yourself. Zarathes's skin erupted in brilliant patterns of gold and violet. When Marcus told me I was beautiful, I experienced feelings I had never known existed. Joy, wonder, a sense of value beyond my designated function. And those feelings did not diminish my capabilities, they enhanced them. How? Mordun demanded. Because happiness is efficient, Zarathes said simply. When I feel valued and appreciated, I want to work harder. When I experience joy and discovery, I become more creative. When I know that someone cares about my well-being, I care more about doing excellent work. The three analysts stood in stunned silence as the implications sank in. Around the bay, the crowd of onlookers was murmuring with excitement. Several other alien species were nodding in recognition. Apparently, humans weren't the only ones who had figured out that emotional well-being improved performance. But the collective teaches that emotional responses create inefficiency, Sylvana said weakly. Maybe, Marcus said gently, the collective has been measuring the wrong things. You've been so focused on preventing deviations that you missed the fact that some deviations are improvements. He gestured to Zarathes, who was practically glowing with happiness and confidence. Look at her. Really look. Is this someone who's been damaged by emotional responses? Or is this someone who's become more than she ever thought she could be? Kethvar stared at Zarathes for a long moment, his perfect composure finally cracking. The readings are unprecedented. Her biochemical markers indicate optimal function combined with elevated creative potential. Because she's not just functional anymore, Marcus said. She's alive. She's discovering what it means to be herself instead of just following her programming. And that doesn't make her broken. It makes her extraordinary. Say it again. Zarathes whispered, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Say what? That I'm beautiful. Please. Marcus smiled and took both her hands in his. You are absolutely, incredibly, magnificently beautiful, Zarathes of the Luminal Collective. Not just optimal or efficient, but truly, genuinely beautiful. Her light patterns exploded in the most brilliant display Marcus had ever seen, cascading in waves that illuminated the entire docking bay. The crowd gasped in appreciation, and even the three analysts took an involuntary step backward. Remarkable, Sylvana Preathet. Her bioluminescent responses are generating patterns I have never seen in collective literature. Because you've never seen someone discover joy, Marcus said. You've never watched someone learn what it feels like to be valued for who they are, not just what they can do. Mordun was staring at his scanner readings with an expression of complete bewilderment. According to these measurements, she is functioning at peak efficiency while simultaneously exhibiting maximum emotional responsiveness. This should be impossible. Should be, Marcus agreed. But here's the thing about impossible. It just means nobody's tried the right approach yet. Kethvar looked from his colleagues to Zarathes to Marcus, his perfect logical composure completely shattered. If these readings are accurate, if emotional enhancement actually improves rather than degrades function, then our entire understanding of optimal behavior may require revision. Not revision, Zarathes said gently. Evolution. Growth. The discovery that we can be both logical and emotional, both efficient and joyful, both perfect in our function and beautiful in our individuality. The three analysts stood in silence for several minutes, processing implications that challenged everything they believed about consciousness and efficiency. Finally, Kethvar spoke. Observer Zarathes, he said formally, by order of the Luminal Collective High Council, you are commended for exceptional innovation in collaborative methodology. Marcus felt relief flood through him. So no reconditioning? No reconditioning, Sylvana confirmed. Instead, you'll be assigned to permanent collaborative status with Technician Shun for continued research into emotional enhancement protocols. Zarathes's light patterns shifted to something that could only be described as pure happiness. I am to remain here, with Marcus? You are to explore this new paradigm, Mordun said, his voice filled with something like wonder. And perhaps teach others what you have learned about the integration of logic and emotion. As the three analysts began making arrangements for extended study programs, Marcus pulled Zarathes aside. So, he said, grinning, how does it feel to single-handedly revolutionize an entire civilization's understanding of consciousness? It feels, Zarathes said, standing on her toes to kiss him, absolutely beautiful. And as her bioluminescent patterns painted the entire docking bay in waves of gold and violet light, Marcus reflected that sometimes the best repairs were the ones that helped people discover they weren't broken in the first place. They were just learning how to shine. 6 months later, the Galactic Trade Station had become something entirely unprecedented, a hub of cross-species collaboration that actually worked. Not just functionally but joyfully. The atmospheric processors hummed contentedly as they cleaned air that now smelled faintly of flowers. The bioneural networks glowed with healthy golden light, their anxiety significantly reduced since the implementation of regular appreciation protocols. Even the HFY quantum processors had stopped overheating, apparently satisfied with the interesting problems that kept coming their way. Marcus Chun stood in what had once been Maintenance Shaft 47, but was now the galaxy's first interspecies emotional engineering laboratory. The cramped space had been expanded into a proper research facility, complete with workstations designed for beings of various sizes and environmental needs. Holographic displays showed data streams from dozens of successful projects, depressed fusion reactors that had been cheered up with music, lonely navigation systems that had been paired with companion AIs, and stubborn shield generators that responded better to polite requests than direct commands. Marcus Zarathes called from across the lab, her bioluminescent patterns swirling in excited spirals. "You need to see this." She was working a station surrounded by what looked like crystalline spiderwebs, Ethereum dream capture technology interfaced with human emotional analysis software. The result was a system that could literally visualize feelings as geometric patterns of light and music. "What did you find?" Marcus asked, moving to stand beside her. Even after 6 months, her presence still made his heart skip a beat. The way her silver hair caught the light, the graceful efficiency of her movements, the brilliant intelligence in those luminous eyes. She was more beautiful every day, and he told her so every chance he got. "I've been analyzing the data from our latest project," Zarathes explained, gesturing to the swirling patterns of light. "The Corthax bioneural networks we helped integrate with the Zentari control systems. Their performance metrics are extraordinary." Marcus studied the readouts. The numbers were indeed impressive. Efficiency up 40%, error rates down to nearly zero, innovation indices higher than anything in the literature. But it was the emotional resonance patterns that caught his attention. "They're happy," he said, grinning. "Not just functional, but genuinely happy." "More than happy," Zarathes corrected, her skin patterns shifting to warm golds and violets. "They're experiencing what I can only describe as fulfillment. They have found purpose beyond mere function." It had taken months to convince the various galactic species that emotions weren't just chaotic distractions from logical thinking, but actually enhanced cognitive performance when properly integrated. The breakthrough had come when they demonstrated that happy bioneural networks didn't just work better, they invented things. New solutions, creative approaches, innovations that emerge from the joy of discovery rather than the pressure of necessity. "The Council of Engineers wants to see our full presentation tomorrow," Zarathes continued. "Representatives from 47 species will attend, including the Zentari High Command," Marcus finished. "The ones who still think emotions are a design flaw in organic consciousness. Yes, and the Vexhai collective mind, which considers individual feelings to be unnecessary complexity." Zarathes's patterns shifted to worried blues. "And the Human Colonial Council, which somehow believes our research might make humans seem weak to other species." Marcus snorted. "Right, because helping others become happier and more efficient is clearly a sign of weakness." The irony wasn't lost on him. When he'd first started working on the station, humans had been seen as primitive brutes who solved problems through aggression and stubbornness. Now, after months of demonstrating that human emotional intelligence could enhance any species' capabilities, some humans were worried about damaging their reputation as strong, logical beings. "Are you nervous about the presentation?" Zarathes asked, though her ability to read his emotional state through biochemical traces in the air meant she already knew the answer. "Terrified," Marcus admitted cheerfully. "But it's the good kind of terrified. The kind that means we're about to change everything." A soft chime from the lab's communication system interrupted them. "Dr. Chun, Dr. Zarathes, you have visitors requesting access." Marcus raised an eyebrow. He still wasn't used to being called doctor, even though the Galactic Council had awarded him an honorary doctorate in emotional engineering 3 months ago. Apparently, revolutionizing how multiple species understood consciousness was considered worthy of advanced degrees. "Who is it, Arya?" he asked. Arya was the station's central AI, upgraded with some of their emotional integration protocols. She was much less anxious than before and had developed what could only be described as a personality. "High Analyst Kethvar of the Luminal Collective, accompanied by two individuals I do not recognize," Arya replied. Though their biochemical signatures suggest they are extremely nervous about something. Marcus and Zarathes exchanged glances. Kethvar had become an enthusiastic supporter of their work after witnessing Zarathes's transformation, but he rarely visited without advance notice. "Send them in," Marcus said. Kethvar entered with his usual precise movements, but his bioluminescent patterns were agitated in a way Marcus had never seen before. Behind him came two aliens Marcus didn't recognize, one that looked like a walking crystal formation and another that resembled a graceful insect made of flowing metal. "Kethvar," Zarathes greeted her former colleague warmly. "What brings you here so unexpectedly?" "I require your assistance," Kethvar said without preamble. "Both of you. We have a situation that challenges conventional diplomatic protocols." The crystalline being stepped forward, its voice sounding like wind through caverns. "I am Resonance of Distant Stars, speaker for the Ethereal Consensus. We have come seeking guidance in matters of emotional complexity." The insect-like alien made a series of harmonic clicks before speaking in perfect standard galactic. "I am Threadweaver SYXNA of the Metamorphic Choir. Our species has encountered difficulties that our traditional logical frameworks cannot address." Marcus felt his curiosity spike. "What kind of difficulties?" Resonance of Distant Stars made a sound like crystals chiming in harmony. "For 3,000 cycles, the ethereal consensus has existed in perfect harmonic unity. We share thoughts, experiences, and consciousness across our entire species. Individual desires have been unnecessary. Until recently," Threadweaver Iswaxana added, her metallic surface rippling with what might have been embarrassment. "Some among our people have begun experiencing singular sensations. Private thoughts, personal preferences that do not contribute to the collective harmony." Marcus was beginning to understand. "You're developing individuality. We are developing irregularities," Resonance of Distant Stars corrected, though his harmonic tones suggested distress. "Members of the consensus are beginning to want things that serve no collective purpose. Beauty, solitude, personal relationships. And your leaders consider this a malfunction," Zarathes said gently. "Worse," Threadweaver SYXNA replied. "They consider it contamination. Exposure to individual-focused species has somehow infected us with selfishness." Resonance of Distant Stars finished miserably. Kethvar's patterns shifted to urgent concern. "Both species have requested intervention from the Galactic Council. They wish to have the affected individuals treated for cognitive contamination and return to proper collective function." Marcus felt anger building in his chest. "They want to erase people's personalities because they're inconvenient. It is more complex than that," Kethvar said carefully. "For species that have existed in perfect unity for millennia, the emergence of individual desires creates genuine chaos. Imagine if parts of your own mind suddenly began wanting contradictory things." "That's called being human," Marcus said dryly. "We call it Tuesday, but for species evolved for collective consciousness, such discord is genuinely painful," Zarathes added thoughtfully. "The question becomes whether the solution is to eliminate individuality or to help them integrate individual desires with collective harmony." "Exactly," Kethvar said. "The Galactic Council has asked us to mediate this situation. Our success with emotional integration protocols makes us the obvious choice to evaluate these individuals and determine whether their developing consciousness represents beneficial evolution or dangerous deviation." Marcus looked at the two aliens, who were clearly struggling with concepts they had no framework to understand. "What do you think?" Do you want help figuring out how to be individuals while still maintaining your collective bonds? Or do you want us to recommend that your personalities be adjusted back to baseline? Resonance of Distant Stars was quiet for a long moment, his crystalline form shifting through different harmonic frequencies. I do not know. The sensations are confusing. Sometimes I find myself appreciating the play of starlight on cosmic dust simply because it is beautiful, not because it serves any function. This seems wasteful, but it brings you joy, Zarathus observed. Yes, he admitted reluctantly. It brings me, a sense of self that exists separate from the consensus. Is this wrong? That's not for us to decide, Marcus said gently. That's for you to decide. But I can tell you that having a sense of self doesn't mean you can't also be part of something bigger. Zarathus is still connected to the luminal collective, but she's also herself. I'm part of the human species, but I'm also Marcus. You could be Resonance of Distant Stars and also be part of the ethereal consensus. Threadweaver, SYXana's metallic surface rippled with shifting colors. In my species, we transform ourselves based on the needs of the community. But recently, I have been choosing forms that please me rather than forms that serve optimal function. I created patterns simply because they felt right, not because they were required. That sounds like self-expression, Marcus said. It sounds like art. Art is inefficient allocation of resources, she replied automatically, then paused. But it made me feel whole, complete in a way that function alone never did. Zarathus moved closer to the two aliens, her patterns shifting to warm, encouraging hues. When Marcus first told me I was beautiful, I experienced something I had no words for. Joy, wonder, a sense that I mattered beyond my designated role. My people called it brightness sickness, a deviation from optimal function. But you are not sick, Resonance of Distant Stars observed. No, I was becoming myself. Zarathus smiled, and becoming myself made me better at everything else I did, not worse. Marcus pulled up a holographic display showing months of data from their research projects. Look at this. Every species that has learned to integrate individual consciousness with collective purpose has shown improved innovation, enhanced problem-solving capabilities, and increased overall satisfaction with their contributions to the group. The key word being integration, Kethvar added. Not abandonment of collective identity, but expansion to include individual growth. Threadweaver, SYXana, studied the data streams with obvious fascination. These metrics suggest that individual consciousness enhances rather than degrades collective function. Because individuals who feel valued and fulfilled contribute more to the group, Marcus explained. Happy people work harder, think more creatively, and care more about the well-being of others. Even in humans? Resonance of Distant Stars asked. Your species is known for individual aggression and competitive behavior. Marcus laughed, especially in humans. We're at our worst when we feel isolated, unappreciated, or forced into roles that don't fit us. But when we feel valued for who we are while still being part of something meaningful, that's when we accomplish impossible things. He gestured around the lab, where dozens of species technologies work together in harmony. This entire facility exists because humans, Luminals, Korthax, Zentari, Vexhi, and 20 other species learned to combine our individual strengths instead of trying to eliminate our differences. The presentation tomorrow, Zarathus said suddenly. Would you like to attend? You could see how these principles apply across multiple species. And maybe, Marcus added, you could share your own experiences. Help the council understand that consciousness isn't a disease that needs curing. It's a gift that needs nurturing. The two aliens exchanged what might have been glances, though their sensory systems were too different from human perception for Marcus to be sure. We would be honored to attend, Resonance of Distant Stars said finally, though we confess uncertainty about what we might contribute. Your presence, Zarathus said simply. Your willingness to explore what it means to be both individual and connected. Your courage in choosing growth over comfort. Threadweaver HFY's surface shifted to patterns of silver and gold. These sensations we have been experiencing, they are not contamination. They're consciousness, Marcus said gently. They're the universe becoming aware of itself through your eyes, your experiences, your unique perspective. That's not contamination. That's evolution. The next morning, the main auditorium of the Galactic Trade Station was packed with representatives from 47 different species. The atmosphere hummed with tension, curiosity, and more than a little skepticism. Beings that had spent millennia believing consciousness was either completely individual or completely collective were about to have their fundamental assumptions challenged. Marcus stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of alien faces, feeling more nervous than he had since his first day on the station. Beside him, Zarathes radiated calm confidence, her bioluminescent patterns steady and warm. "Esteemed delegates," he began. "6 months ago, I accidentally called an alien girl beautiful. She blushed and asked me to say it again." A ripple of what might have been amusement went through the audience. Several species didn't have facial expressions, but their biochemical signatures suggested interest. "That moment changed everything," Marcus continued. "Not just for us, but for our understanding of consciousness itself. Because in that moment, we discovered that being seen, being valued, being appreciated for who we are, that's not just a nice feeling. It's a fundamental requirement for optimal cognitive function." He activated the holographic displays, showing months of research data. Every sentient being, regardless of species, performs better when they feel fulfilled. Not just efficient, not just functional, but genuinely satisfied with their role and their contributions. Zarathes stepped forward. The Luminal Collective taught that emotional responses were inefficient deviations from optimal function. But our research proves the opposite. Emotional integration doesn't reduce efficiency, it enhances it. The same principle applies to individual consciousness within collective societies, Marcus added, nodding to resonance of distant stars and Threadweaver SYXANA in the audience. Individual awareness doesn't threaten group harmony. It strengthens it, because individuals who feel valued contribute more to the collective good. A crystalline being in the front row made harmonious chiming sounds. "You propose that consciousness is beneficial even in species evolved for collective function?" "I propose that consciousness is inevitable," Marcus replied. "The universe tends toward increasing complexity and awareness. Fighting that tendency is like trying to stop a star from shining. But embracing it, learning to integrate individual growth with collective purpose, that's how species transcend their limitations." An insect-like delegate clicked rapidly before speaking. "What evidence supports these claims beyond emotional preferences?" Zarathes smiled and activated a new set of displays. Innovation rates, problem-solving speeds, adaptation to new challenges, creative synthesis of different approaches. Every metric we can measure shows improvement when individuals are encouraged to develop their unique perspectives while maintaining connection to their communities. "Consider this station," Marcus added, gesturing to the facility around them. 50 different species, hundreds of incompatible technologies, thousands of individuals with different needs and desires. Traditional approaches would have tried to standardize everything, eliminate the variables, create uniform efficiency. Instead, we celebrated the differences, Zarathes continued. "We found ways for each system, each species, each individual to be themselves while contributing to something bigger." And the result? The displays shifted to show station-wide performance metrics. Overall efficiency up 60%. Innovation indices at record levels. Satisfaction ratings approaching theoretical maximums across all species, Marcus announced. "Not despite our differences, but because of them." A tall, elegant being that Marcus recognized as a Zentari administrator stood up. "These results are impressive, but what about social stability? Individual consciousness leads to conflicting desires, competing priorities, social discord. Only if you assume that individual fulfillment comes at the expense of collective well-being, Zarathustra replied. But our research shows the opposite. When individuals feel valued and fulfilled, they naturally want to contribute more to their communities. Marcus nodded toward the back of the auditorium, where several figures had just entered. I'd like you to hear from some people who are experiencing this firsthand. Resonance of Distant Stars moved forward with his characteristic harmonic grace, his crystalline form shifting through beautiful frequency patterns. For 3,000 cycles, I was part of the ethereal consensus without being myself. I contributed to our collective harmony, but I felt empty, incomplete. His voice resonated through the auditorium with crystalline clarity. Then I began to experience individual consciousness, personal desires, private thoughts. My people called it contamination, but it felt like awakening. For the first time, I appreciated beauty not because it served a function, but because it brought me joy. And did this make you less committed to your people? Marcus asked gently. No, Resonance of Distant Stars replied, his harmonic tones brightening. It made me understand why our collective harmony was worth preserving. When you have experienced the gift of individual consciousness, you want to share that gift with others. I became more devoted to my people's well-being, not less. Threadweaver SYXANA stepped forward, her metallic surface rippling with patterns of silver and gold. In my species, we transform ourselves to serve community needs. I was efficient, functional, perfectly adapted to each task. But I was not me. She shifted into a form that was clearly artistic rather than functional. Flowing curves and spiraling patterns that served no purpose except beauty. When I learned to choose forms that pleased me as well as serving others, I discovered creativity I never knew I possessed. I began inventing new transformation patterns that were both beautiful and functional. Individual consciousness didn't make me selfish. It made me creative. A murmur went through the audience as delegates processed these testimonies. Marcus could sense the shift in the room's emotional atmosphere. Skepticism giving way to curiosity, fear being replaced by wonder. The question before us today, Zarathustra said, her bioluminescent patterns brightening to address the entire auditorium, is not whether consciousness is spreading through the galaxy. It is. The question is whether we will fight this evolution or embrace it. Whether we will try to eliminate individual awareness to preserve collective order, Marcus added, or learn to integrate both individual fulfillment and collective purpose into something greater than either could achieve alone. He looked out at the assembled delegates, representatives of dozens of species that had spent millennia believing consciousness was a zero-sum game. I'm not asking you to abandon your collective identities. I'm asking you to expand them, to become communities of individuals instead of collections of functions. A being that looked like living shadow raised a tendril in question. How do we implement such integration without